Hey guys, and welcome back to Red Dog Bushcraft. Today I'm going to be grinding up some venison. I have a video out there that talks about pressure canning and preserving it, but I don't have one on the actual process of taking it from the hoof to ground meat. Now let me say before we start, one of the most important parts of this entire process begins with the initial cleaning of that animal. Making sure that it's very clean, that anything that's in that animal that could taint that meat is removed, and that's including some of the hair from the fur. Try to get it as clean as you can. Then I like to hang my deer for at least 72 hours in a cold box and let that meat chill out. If you can't do that, that's okay, but I think it enhances the quality of the meat if you can do that, and it firms it up and makes it a little bit easier to work with. After that 72 hours, I quarter that animal up and I make it in workable sections that I can bring home. And one piece at a time, I'll bring it in the house and I'll cut it up. And all I do is I cut it into strips like this. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. You don't have to be a great butcher. I certainly am not. You just have to be able to get it to a size that it will go into the grinding portion of your grinder. Now I'm using a number 5 2.25 horsepower meat grinder that I picked up at Bass Pro Shop. We've been using that grinder now for about 5 years, I think, and it has served us extremely well. It is on the small size, but for just a family operation, it seems to do just fine. And it beats the heck out of that hand grinder that I used for years. Now, when you start processing your meat, that cleanliness goes right on into the actual meat processing. And I cannot overemphasize enough the importance of washing that grinder and all of its parts very well. I wash them by hand, then I wash them in the dishwasher, and then I assemble and I go straight to my meat production. It goes for yourself, being nice and clean, making sure your countertops are clean. Anything that's going to come in contact with that meat needs to be washed up and cleaned very well. Now the next step is to actually grind the meat. And I'm going to zoom in here and I'll show you the way that works. But it's going to be noisy, so I'm not going to do a lot of it. But I just wanted to show you the actual operation of the grinder here for just a moment. Just take my strips of meat, feed them into the bin. Sometimes you need to give it a little gentle push. And we will continue that until we have ground the entire portion of meat that we intend on grinding. Now I'll cut and I'll come back to you in just a minute and we'll talk about mixing that with some fat. Once we have all of our meat ground, I'm going to grind it again. And this time I'm going to mix it with equal parts of the fattiest hamburger that I can find. Now in my area, the fattest hamburger I can find is 73% lean, which is 27% fat. And I'm going to mix that 50-50. Now some people can get their hands on scraps from the butcher shop, and some people can get beef fat and they mix it that way. And you just have to vary your ratios. My family likes it mixed with ground beef, so we actually use our venison as an extender. We like the way it tastes and we like the way it cooks up. That's what works for us. And it's a nice, easy way for you to be able to grind your burger, because most of us can find hamburger in the grocery stores or our local butcher shop, where we might have trouble nowadays trying to find beef fat. So I'm measured out equal parts. I've got 2.5 pounds of venison, and these are broken down into 2.5 pounds of ground beef, and I'm going to run that through the grinder again, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, I know this is going to be noisy, but I just want to show you the way I do this. I push in a little bit of the venison and then grab a little bit of the hamburger and just start shoving it down in the grinder, and I'll push it down with this tool to come with the grinder. And as I do that, it's mixing it up in a ratio that I think we'll find is acceptable. Now you just have to use your eye, because this is compressed and this is loose, just to get it to come out. I just want you to see what that looks like as it comes out. and how I process that up. So here's about what it's looking like. I'm going to go ahead and do 2.5 pounds of this, 5 pounds total, and then I'll mix it a little bit and we'll do a test. Okay, we've run that first batch, and all I'm going to do is reach in here in the center of this, and I'm just going to make a small hamburger patty. Nothing big, nothing fancy, just a little bit larger than a good size sausage patty. And this is just going to be for us to sample. We're going to take that over to the fry pan and see how it cooks up. Okay, I made me up a little patty, and even though it's small, I've left it the thickness that it normally would be if I made a hamburger patty. We're just going to take that, throw it in a hot pan, and see how our grease and how much shrinkage we get, and if we're happy with this fat mixture. Okay, so we've got a little bit of grease. Doesn't look here, it doesn't look too bad. I didn't have to add any grease to cook it, so that's a good thing. Bubbling up over here a little bit. Let's cut this down some. It did release, so it's not sticking. And we've got a great color on the other side. So far I think our mix is looking really good. We will stand by here just a minute before we do any more and go for the taste test. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. I'll turn the light on here, and that'll give you an idea of the amount of grease that's in this burger. It's pretty lean. If you remember, we started out with 27% fat. So now our fat content should be at about 13.5. That's pretty lean, but it's cooking up nice, and we definitely have enough to cook it without adding oil. So let's give it a taste and see how that does. Holds together well. It's not falling all apart, which would indicate not enough fat. It is still juicy, but it's definitely very lean, which is exactly what I want. I don't want a whole lot of fat. I just want enough to be able to cook it and to get some of those good flavors out of it. So that's going to work for me. I'm going to go ahead and process up the rest of this, grinding it all up. I'll shoot another video here in a little while of how I actually package this up for freezing. So stay tuned for that in a later video. Excuse me, that is really good. But until then, I'm Tim Langston with Red Dog Bushcraft, home of global safety and survival. Until next time, God bless.